Yo, what's good? Hello, YouTube. It's been quite a while since my last video update on the champion. Honestly, it's been like 3 years now since I uploaded, so I do apologize for the lack of content, but I was never sure if I wanted to do YouTube or not. So when I do come up with a video, it's usually in the moment and out of passion, just wanting to talk about how I approach the game as a Nasus main. But yeah, here we are. We're back finally after almost 3 years, 2 seasons absent, but here I am. I'm back. Dad's back with some milk. I got you guys with the good content, the stuff that you guys want to hear about. Just me ranting about the state of the game and the state of the champion, whatnot. And yes, as you guys can see, I'm pretty high ranked right now. I am currently over 1k LP, playing mostly Nasus, but also some Jax, as you can see. This is one of my Challenger accounts. I have multiple Challenger accounts this season. I've been pretty active for the first split of this year so far. And yeah, it also happens that I'm the only Challenger Nasus player right now in the world. And I'm also by far the highest rated Nasus player right now. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys some insights to how to play the game and how to approach the game with this champion this season. Alright, so before we get into the topic of Nasus top, I want to briefly touch on the subject of Nasus mid. A lot of you guys have asked me this before, so why do I not play Nasus mid anymore? I invented Nasus mid in early season 11, almost over 4 years ago, and that was a very different meta, okay? That was when two items existed in the game, called Divine Sunder and Gargoyle Stoneplate, respectively. Those two items, alright, were by far the most broken items Nasus ever had in the history of the game. Like, they were completely broken, especially Divine Sunder. They were so broken that it was not just limited to ADCs. I mean, it was not limited to just bruisers, but ADCs were also building it sometimes, like Ezreal, if I remember correctly. So yeah, so having those two items meant I was able to basically 1v9 like every game much easier than I can now. The lack of 1v9 potential for Nasus directly correlates to the removal of those two items. And I don't really mind that because, I mean, like, they were not really healthy for the game. So, like, it is what it is type of deal. And I've been Challenger for over 3 years now with Nasus mid. So it's not like I believe it's dead in the meta. You can definitely still play it. However, what I do believe is that Nasus top is in a much stronger state than Nasus mid at the moment. The meta encourages team play, right? Like never before. So if you play utility Nasus, it's not only, it not only allows for a larger margin for error, but it's also simply the stronger version of Nasus in terms of winning the game. So I'm assuming that's why you guys are here. It's like you guys want to win the game. So yeah, the playstyle of playing to 1v9 a game as Nasus has fallen off immensely. And it's also worsened by the fact that Nasus, basically has no late game. Okay, so why is Nasus not late game? In general, in the current meta, well, actually for the last 2 years, late game has been dominated by mages and ADCs, simply because of how itemization works. Like, you guys have to understand this. Bruisers tend to fall off late game, and Nasus is no exception. It also doesn't help that most bruisers are melee characters, and most mages ADCs are ranged characters. So what tends to happen a lot of the times in late game is that the mages and ADCs just sits behind someone tanky on their team very comfortably, and they free hit, while the enemy bruiser struggles to get on top of them. They also have a lot of ways to self-peel, things like Syndra E, Ezreal E, it's also extra bad for Nasus because, Nasus is already a very, very immobile character that doesn't even have a gap closer like some other bruisers have. So you might say, oh, but Nasus infinitely skills his Q, so doesn't that make him broken in late game? Absolutely not. That is not how infinitely skilling champs work. So Nasus infinitely scales in the time given per game, which is 99% of the time not going to be over 40 minutes. Okay? So infinitely scaling champs are balanced around the fact that an actual game doesn't last infinitely. Okay? So they really don't infinitely scale at all. Think of champs like Veigar or Kindred, right? They also follow the same formula for infinitely scaling champs, but they build mage ADC items, respectively. So they actually get to scale while Nasus kind of just falls off hard around the 30 minutes mark. So this kind of sucks. I mean, this obviously sucks because, you know, Nasus is also not known to have a good early game. In fact, he has an atrocious early game, which means you really have to take advantage of the mid game to impact the map and the game, and potentially end the game before then. If the game lasts over 30 minutes, Nasus is completely worthless. The game just becomes completely out of your control. Alright, so on to the next point here. Stacking is a luxury, not a necessity. So what exactly does this mean? Alright, it means exactly what it means. You should never walk up for a minion if it means that you will take a bad trade for it. Alright, so in high elo, especially in Challenger, if I moved to queue a single minion, okay, a single one, I could get chunked very hard, and what that does is that it could lead to me getting dove by enemy jungler or support for free, which in turn potentially loses me and my team the entire game. Yes, you could legit lose an entire game for walking up at the wrong time to queue a single minion. That is how punishing it is. You cannot comprehend the level of discipline I've developed over the years when it comes to this. Sometimes I will just give 3 cannons in a row if it means that I can preserve HP and sitting lane comfortably, or be able to move for an early game objective if needed. Like, it just doesn't matter. You're giving that minion, okay? This is what it means to be consistent. Stacks also doesn't really matter if the game state is bad. Like, if the map is completely unplayable, or if your team is just down thousands of gold, 500 stacks at 20 minutes will feel like 0 stacks. Because you just can't kill anyone, and you will never do any damage because the entire enemy team is ahead. But on the other hand, if the game state is good, if you and your team is like up gold collectively, 250 stacks at 20 minutes will feel like a hit for 500. Because it feels this way because the enemy is behinding levels, items, objectives, and perpetually just everything. They're just fully behind, right? This is also why I just get very annoyed when I see people ask the question, like, what should the average stack count for X timer be? Like, no, that should never even be a question. Because all that really matters is that, you know, if you piloted the game well enough where the game state is in a playable position or not. If the game state is unplayable, then you just can't play. Like, stacks just doesn't matter, okay? If the game state is completely good, completely playable, the map is ahead, then having less stacks 99% of the time just doesn't matter because you're not playing to scale into late game anyway. The next point I want to talk about is movement speed. So movement speed has been nerfed multiple times over the course of a year and a half. But in my opinion, okay, it's still the most needed stat for Nasus. And I'll explain why. So not having movement speed makes Nasus more prone to getting kited. You can't use your stacks, obviously, if you can't get on top of the enemy, right? Rushing early game movement speed also allows you to get back to lane faster or enter a skirmish faster. So yes, you are going to give up actual stats, like HP or damage stats, to move faster. But more times than not, getting into the position that you need to be is better than having HP or damage stats, but not being able to get there. Because if you're not able to get there, then you cannot impact the play, okay? So not being able to directly influence a play could potentially lose you the entire game, basically. It's also really good at countering proxies. So I will now give a brief explanation on why you want to at least attempt to stop a proxy. Some champs cannot be stopped, like Singed and sometimes Garen. but we will get that. We will get into that later. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about why proxying is really, really bad. Like, it's really bad for Nasus to get proxied on, okay? So a lot of people think that it's a very good thing to get proxied on as Nasus because that means you can just free farm. Wrong, okay? Very big mistake. This is a very, very big mistake when you think that way. Proxying allows the enemy top player to freely do whatever they want on the map, basically. So let it be mess with your jungler or roam mid for free. When the enemy top laner gets into a full proxy position, they basically have full agency of your entire top side, which might be okay for you, but it is not okay for your jungler, okay? If we backtrack 1 or 2 chapters to the things I was talking about earlier, League of Legends in 2025 is a team game, and when your team is behind, the game is just not winnable, okay? If your jungler gets screwed over too hard, it's much worse for the overall game state than if you were to get screwed over, okay? Because the jungler directly impacts all 3 lanes and interacts with all 4 of their teammates, as well as all 5 of the opponents, okay? But you, as a top laner, you only hold down 1 lane, and you interact with only 1 player for the majority of the early game. So having your jungler getting screwed over is much worse than if you were just to get screwed over straight up. So what happens when the game state is bad? Stacks don't matter, okay? So now going back to rushing movement speed in some games, it doesn't fully counter proxying, but what it does is that it allows you to have some agency to move around the map, walk with the wave, etc. It's better than having nothing. It's better than not having any movement speed. So I've personally been taking celerity as well as movement speed shard quite a bit, and then I will just rush Swifties straight up. In some of my games, I do that to combat proxying. I do that to combat, just having a lack of agency and, giving myself more time up on the map, as well as being able to get onto the map faster. So here I will go to my Nasus games played, and I'll show you guys a few of the games where I would just take movement speed. I think I probably did it this game. Yeah, I did this game against Darius, took celerity. I didn't take the movement speed shard though, but okay, so on a few examples here. I was playing against Viper Riven. Very, very insane, best Riven player in the world, potentially. Maybe it's Alois, but they're both really, really good Riven players. This guy's definitely the best Riven on the server. I'm just playing weak side versus Viper. I took celerity here. Also rushed Swifties here. Swifties also help a lot in escaping ganks because your champion's very immobile. So in the early game, if you pop Ghost and you have Swifties, and you can actually outrun stuff like Nunu Snowball a lot of the times. So that's really good. Having movement speed allows you to just get out of situations that you normally cannot. Here I play against a Trendemir. I take celerity here. I'm rushing swiftness boots, giving myself more agency, stopping his proxying, stuff like that. Double X Gragas. Okay, well, yeah. So, oh yeah, maybe this game here too. Yeah, I did. Took it here against the Rumble. Build items I need to build early game, stuff like that, which I will get into later. But yeah, so that's kind of movement speed in the movement speed chapter. Okay, this isn't really considered a chapter, but I want to briefly talk about Sheen. So this might be a preference thing, but I feel like, in my opinion, Sheen is almost always bad to rush in the current meta. There are very few matchups that you want to rush Sheen in. You only really want to rush Sheen when you want to rush Triforce, which I will get into later. I want to talk about Triforce later as well. But yeah, so mostly because it just feels so impossible to solo kill your opponent nowadays. That rushing Sheen just feels like it sucks so bad because the only stats you're rushing basically from it is like the 10 haste if you're not utilizing the damage, which is basically like recalling for 2 glowing motes. Like, how bad that is, right? So this also might be a cognitive bias because I don't really play in lower elos. But when it comes to high elo, at least, rushing Sheen almost always leads to unfavorable positions, like getting dove easier, for example, or in the case of enemy proxy, you kind of just get stuck under your turret. You get lane locked until your next TP timer, right? Which is really bad because, I mean, that's like 4 or 5 minutes, right? Like, you have to wait so long for your TP to come back up, and now you're stuck under tower versus someone that's proxying. You know, I just covered proxying, so you guys get the idea. I don't know. Perhaps rushing Sheen, like maybe it's not as bad as it is in lower elos because enemies might just make a mistake and you can potentially find the all-in 1v1, which is basically the point for rushing Sheen is that you want to look for the 1v1 in the early game, like level 6, level 7. But in a meta where movement speed is so OP, where Swifties is so strong, like a lot of the times, your opponent is just going to first back with Swifties versus Nasus, right? Because Swifties is so meta now. Everybody builds Swifties. And at that point, if you don't have your own Swifties to match, it just feels so bad to play because, you know, let's say you have a Sheen, right? You just can't really do anything with it anyway. Because, I mean, if they have Swifties, you're never killing them. They just cannot ever die, right? Unless you have your own. So, you know, it doesn't even give you any tanky stats or any of that. So you can't really do anything with it except for all-in, which is very telegraphed. And I just don't believe it's a good way to play the game because it's just it's very inconsistent, right? It relies on the enemy being bad at the game. Yeah, so like it's 2025, so like people have gotten so much better at playing against Nasus. Like even in lower ranks, dying to a Sheen Nasus it's like you have to be so stupid to die to a Sheen Nasus, right? So because of this, I feel like rushing Sheen nowadays feels extremely bad, and it's probably actually really bad. And you know, you guys should try to adapt and just try to go Sheen less and try to rush more movement speed, in my opinion, or like just tanky stats. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Triforce. I think Triforce is really bad. I've had this talk with a lot of my Challenger ELO toppling friends, as well as some pro players, and the general consensus right now is that Triforce is not great, but certain champions lack other items to build. So one main reason it sucks is because champions that build Eclipse does extremely well into Triforce builders. And the problem with Eclipse is that it costs only 2.9k gold, while Triforce costs over 3.3k gold. So not only is it over 400 gold cheaper, it also tends to perform better at the one item spike. So what this means is that if you're behind as a Triforce builder, it's just so much more worse because you're building an expensive item that tends to lose to a cheaper item that your opponent's building, which is also just gonna set you even more behind. The thing with Nasus is that he tends to be slightly behind versus most champs in the early game, which means more times than not, you will be playing from a slight gold deficit, right? So having your one item spike being more expensive and also worse than the opponents, while also being behind in gold, right? It's a recipe for disaster. This issue gets a lot more prominent the higher elo you go when you're more likely to be behind. So this is also why you can probably see from my OPGG that I've been running Iceborne Gauntlet a lot more than I would like to. But the games that I really just, you know, I'm just really behind. Like a lot of the times I'm just behind, right? I'm just weak-sided and I got put too far behind for Triforce to even be considered. Like it's just never even an item that I can go. That being said though, Iceborne and Thunder Sky is actually a very nice combo, especially when you're on a budget. Going Iceborne first also allows you to skip an armor item, so that's really, really good. That's also one of the main attractions of this item, is that if you go Iceborne, you can skip stuff like Randuin's and Frozen Heart, because your Iceborne already gives you armor, which allows you to build stuff like Thunder Sky, and also gives you like an MR item as a third option or second option if really needed, right? So yeah, that's basically my take on Triforce at the moment. So what does it mean to be flexible with itemization and runes? A common theme that I see a lot of OTPs do is that they are very rigid with how they play their champion. They have one way to play it and either struggles to adapt or is unwilling to adapt and change their playstyle to better warp around the meta, which is not ideal. A lot of League is just about pattern recognition, and what that means is just being able to make sense of the game. Because then you can start to learn new things, and you can, potentially in turn make better decisions down the line. It's also just about being open-minded enough to try new things and see if they work or not in certain scenarios. Don't be scared to lose a game or two off building suboptimally, because you will never know that until you've tried it. So yeah, I mean, League is just 4D chess. Don't use the same openings over and over. Be creative and find new ways to play. I think this is extremely important if you're an OTP, probably more important than if you were to play multiple champs, because if you play only one character and you are unable to adapt to the meta and be flexible, then it's just really doomed, because you already only play one character, right? So to give off a few examples here, this game played 3 weeks ago. I was playing against a Challenger Rumble player. They have the rank 1 player on their team, Pentalus, a new OTP guy. So I take one look at their team. My matchup is really bad, but they're triple AP topside. So what that means is that I will drop everything and I will just build as much MR as I possibly can. As you guys can see here, I didn't build a Sheen until 17 minutes. And I actually didn't complete a Sheen item till 27. I basically rushed 3 MR items in a row, and I carried the game because they're full MR except for Tristana, and he wasn't fed if I remember correctly. Well, he did a lot of damage, but that's not really the point. He just wasn't fed early game. He was just doing a lot of damage. And this game here, for example, I'm playing against Whippo, a very, very good player, very, very probably one of the best pro NA tops in the server. FlyQuest top laner, very good player. So here I put some points in E to neutralize early. I rush Swifties against Garen to potentially stop him from proxying, and also I use Swifties and movement speed. All the movement speed I have here, I use it to space Garen E, which is the majority of the damage that I'm gonna take early game against Garen. So when he walks up with E, I can kind of just walk out of it, and just, he'll lose all that damage on me, which is good because I'm basically preventing him from doing damage to me early game. And I just go, I go into Iceborne, going to my Thunder Sky, the normal movement speed Iceborne build that I've been doing. What's some other games here? Yeah, this one here against Double Lift, for example. So yeah, this is a pretty greedy build, but I can afford to go greedy here because I do know that he is autofill player. So if he's an autofill player, he probably doesn't know matchups well. Obviously, he's just playing Phil. Bro's just playing Gragas. So here I can just Q-max fully. I can skill harder than I normally do and just rush Triforce early, which I normally don't do anymore, but even going Lucidity boost here, which is really greedy. But again, I'm playing against someone that's not experienced in the role. This is what you can do against people that are auto-filled. And then I go Oblivion Orb to counter the healing on their team, stuff like that. And here, this game against Philip, very good top laner again. I'm just playing weak side, and I also got solo killed one time early, which means I'm going to be in full defensive mode. I'm just putting points in E, I'm neutralizing the lane, and I'm going MR. I don't have to go any damage. I don't really even have to go Sheen here, but I could. It doesn't really matter. Just need to make sure I don't die more than I already did. Stabilize the game with MR rush early, and then, just be useful later on. Find a way to be useful later on, and apply pressure somewhere or provide utility for the team, stuff like that. Building Oblivion Orb into stuff that heals. Like this game, for example, again, I'm playing weak side, very difficult game. I fell really, really far behind this game, but it wasn't really a big deal. I just put points in E. I completely gave up on Q-max in this game, actually. I completely gave up on Q-maxing here. I put points in E and I started putting points in W, actually. I bought an Oblivion Orb to stop the healing on their team, and then I straight up just went a Dead Man's Plate. Like, you see what I mean? Like, you just have to kind of... you have to be able to adapt and just be flexible with builds, you know, just be smart about it, because more times than not in challenger lobbies you're gonna be put behind. You're gonna have to play weak side, and that's just the correct way to play the game. So the next point, next chapter I want to talk about here is something that should never happen, but if it does, you know, there are some countermeasures that you can do in order to play the game. So when lane gets so bad, like it gets so doomed that you can't even enter top, like sometimes it's just better to rush boots and move away from top side completely, okay? So this is generally done as a last resort, but generally speaking, if you play the game properly, it should never get to this point for Nasus. So I already said that, but I'm gonna say it again. Emax should allow you to at least be able to play the game, but let's just hypothesize in a scenario where you got so screwed that you can't enter top lane. So what now? There's generally things that you can do to still be useful in situations like these. Generally speaking, when your lane is that doomed, it's much more likely for the enemy jungler to try to pass top to set you even further behind, because you're now a huge liability, okay? So think of it like you are the weak point of your team, and the enemy is trying everything to exploit that, and they're trying to break through this weak point and win the game. So at this point, you know, obviously, given enough information on the map through vision and whatnot, like it is better to just click bot lane or try to make a play bot side instead of re-entering the doomed top side, as it is now completely screwed. So maybe like securing a dragon with your jungle at like 5 to 6 minutes, or to dive the enemy bot lane with your jungler, stuff like that. Just make yourself useful in any form or shape possible, basically. And after that, maybe you can suggest a lane swap with your bot lane, because it's much easier for two people to deal with the fed top laner, and for you to just soak XP in bot lane over getting frozen on and denied in 1v1, right? So it's much better in this situation for you to do a lane swap than for the enemy top, because what he wants is he wants to keep pressuring you in the 1v1, keep making the game unplayable, right? But it's not really possible for him to do that versus two champs. So this is why lane swapping in a very doomed scenario is, generally speaking, only a positive, but only, like, you know, it's solo queue, so sometimes people don't really want to do that, so you have to communicate. But yeah, so like no matter what, do not autopilot and just keep clicking down top lane, because you will just end up dying over and over again, which will just doom the game even more than it already is. Nasus isn't very good at proxying, but another thing that you could potentially do is you could ditch a wave to the enemy top laner. So like walk back top lane, but you just like you loop around out of vision, like to proxy between tier 2 and tier 3. Just ditch a wave, like literally just ditch a wave. Doesn't really matter, just as long as you're able to soak, right? So soak with Emax and maybe like some AP stats in the early game. Maybe just get like a amp tome so you can like at least farm, put points in E and just soak. Like just try everything you can basically to break the freeze or to soak EXP, right? Stuff like that. Nasus is actually a champion that is able to provide a lot of value regardless of how behind he is, as long as he soaks enough XP to put points in W and E. So yeah, that's something you can do. Honestly, that's probably what I did this game, where the game I just showed earlier, where I went against Rengar. I was really screwed over, but yeah, so this game I was screwed over, but I was able to play the game by I don't think I proxied, but I think I just moved around the map because I couldn't really lane, so that also explains why I built the way I did. But yeah, this is very important. Like you just don't, no matter what you do, do not brainlessly click down the lane, like in vision. I see a lot of lower elo players do that when the lane is so doomed and unplayable, and it's clear that the enemy jungle is also there to deny you even more and potentially just kill you, and they just keep clicking down top and they just die over and over and over again, you know? Like, do not do that. That is really, really bad. So the next chapter here is understanding game tempo and how to play around carries as Nasus. Currently, the main reason to play Nasus top is for his utility and neutralizing abilities. You gradually transition from playing as a carry in lower elo to playing as a utility the higher you go. So this kind of comes naturally as a Nasus top lane player because it is almost impossible to fully 1v9 game as Nasus in this meta. So like even if you're against like very favorable matchups or comps, it's still very difficult for you to fully 1v9 game. So yeah, so this is basically why as you get better and you climb higher and higher, you kind of just naturally what's the word? You kind of just gravitate towards playing utility, right? When the caliber of players improve and you're just getting harder and harder opponents, that gives you like a harder time at laning. So yeah, being able to play weak side properly and soaking pressure and still be useful later on is the core of this champion in Challenger. Let's say you survive a gank at level 5. You know, it could potentially win you guys the game because it opens up play for your bot side with your jungler. And, you know, your jungler dives the enemy bot and they die and you don't die. So, I mean, you know, that's called splitting the map. And it's also the most important concept for Nasus top. I would say that if you're unable to drop your ego and do this, then Nasus top is really not for you. Like if you just cannot play weak side no matter what, I suggest playing a different champ because the best way to play Nasus top is to play him weak side. So yeah, in the mid to late game, a lot of the times when you are versus split pusher as Nasus, what you can do is you can walk to a fight without burning TP and then using the TP defensively to defend the split pusher after winning the fight. With the TP changes, it now takes a lot longer before it sends you to the location like before. So more times than not, being there first and engaging first potentially is almost always better than TPing into the fight because it's just so delayed and team fights generally last anywhere between, I would say, 10 to 20 seconds in League. So every second really counts. If you're TPing in and then, you know, you just get there late, the fight's already over, and then you're just sitting there, you just look dumb, right? It's just stupid. Having all this movement speed also, like this is also why movement speed's OP right here, because having all this movement speed allows you to do this better, right? It lets you walk there faster, and then you can use TP as a defensive tool. And yeah, in my opinion, this is probably the best way to play mid-late game as mid-late game fights at the moment as Nasus. Another change from previous meta is how to play around your carries. You kind of have to rely on your carries to do damage in the mid-late game. Very hard for Nasus to just like solo run in as the engager to do damage, especially because movement speed items also tend to have less overall stats, which means that it's harder for Nasus to engage first because you tend to be squishier, right? You're giving up like actual stats for movement speed stats. So you generally, more times than not, you just want to sit around your carries and you want to peel for them. You want to wait for them to engage into you instead, more times than not. Obviously, having a champion on your team that can initiate the engage is really good, like having a Rail, having a Zac, or having like a jungle Wukong, stuff like that. All very, very good with a champion like Nasus, because then you can kind of play front to back, and Nasus honestly excels at that. That's probably the best thing he does. So yeah. Alright, so we're coming to an end here. I actually have a lot of other stuff that I can talk about, but I do not want to fit them all into this single video. All this stuff here is basically the most important things that you guys have to understand when playing Nasus and just playing League in general, honestly. So yeah, let's get into it here. Having good spacing and movement, or in other words, good clicks. It's not something that you really need, but it's always better to be able to do it than not to be able to do it. However, it kind of comes from playing the game a lot. It's part of game sense, and that is very hard to learn. It doesn't really matter what champions you pilot, having good clicks is almost always better. But generally speaking, it's pretty difficult for the majority of the players, the majority of the player base to do, because you guys simply don't play the game as much as the Challenger player do. So your game knowledge and your game sense would never be at a level where you can just say, oh, it's easy to dodge things or to space things, right? It's also quite affected by ping. So, you know, let's say you're from NA and you're West Coast on 60 ping. It's much harder to react to spells than if you had 15 ping on East Coast. Maybe if you're in Chicago, you have like single digit ping. I play on West Coast myself with 60 ping, so a lot of the times I find myself just predicting rather than reacting when I space or dodge stuff. And that can't really be helped. You know, things like location just can't really be helped. So, I mean, it is what it is. All right, so here's actually, I guess like it's like a video kind of. I can kind of show you what I mean when I say having good movement and being able to dodge stuff. It just kind of comes naturally from playing the game quite a bit. So you might ask, how do you have such good movement against a Syndra? Well, it just comes from playing the game a lot. Also comes from playing this matchup a lot. You know, in games like this, and also you can see here my ping is rather high. So a lot of the times when I'm dodging stuff, it's purely out of prediction, and I'm purely predicting where the general area of where she's gonna hit, not really from like reacting to it, right? Because I would say it's kind of impossible to react to it on this ping. So you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here a little bit, just having good clicks and how much that actually matters, because you're actually preventing yourself from taking so much unnecessary damage, things like that. I'd say it's very, very important. I don't want to watch the whole video here. It's quite long, I would say, but you know, I get hit by some stuff. I'm not a perfect player, so getting hit by a bunch of stuff, but you know, dodging what you can. Obviously, you want to be able to do stuff like that. So yeah, you know, we're gonna have out here, and I'm gonna find another example here. Oh yeah, so this example right here, playing against Cassante. I actually get hit by quite a few things here. I'm getting hit by a bunch of these spells here, but you want to be able to, like, look at this, right? So I have, first of all, look at my items. I have Swifties here, and I have Ghosts, I have Swifties, I have Phase Rush. Obviously, getting more movement speed allows you to space and dodge stuff better. So this definitely helps. You kind of just have to predict. I'm kind of just predicting, you know, how he's gonna cast these spells. I'm not really reacting to it. Like you can see right here, when I click back here, it's purely out of like instinct, and I'm just like, because I know that if I keep clicking forward, then he's gonna cast a spell, stuff like that. So you know, I turn around here to bait, and then you know, I wait he's 3-0 and I kill him. The stuff like this is, you know, you find very niche, I would say, kill timers that you normally probably don't have if you're unable to move like this. But this comes from game sense and stuff like that. I can show you guys one more example here. I have a lot more, but I'm just gonna show you guys a few because I don't want to you know, waste so much time here. But yeah, right here, you guys can see from my movement that yeah, so this is actually quite a bad fight for me to take, because my TP is coming back up and I have enough gold for Triforce. So realistically, if I'm a safe player and I know my limits, I can just recall. I can wait for my TP and just recall and buy Triforce and walk back, right? Because the Gwent has already gone, he's recalling, so he has a Riftmaker, which means that in order for me to kill her here, I have to outplay like immensely. So this is actually quite risky, but this is kind of like knowing your limits and also trusting that you're able to move in a certain way to dodge spells, which also just comes from game knowledge. The way, as you can see, the way I'm clicking, it's purely out of prediction. I cannot react to stuff on this ping. So especially the second dodge right here, this is a very delayed reaction, by the way. Like I'm predicting it. Basically, I'm not. It's a very delayed reaction from her. Honestly, she could have hit this, but she didn't. As you can see, and then she dies to this. I dodged two of her ult charges, and I dodged her one of her empowered Q charges, or half of it. But you can see it's still so close because obviously it's not a very good timer for me to fight, but I take it because I know my limits. So yeah, I mean, there's that stuff like that. I'm just showing you kind of you know, taking what having good movement and having good clicks can get you. But yeah. All right, well, that is it from me, guys. For now, that's gonna be all you guys are getting. I hope that it has been helpful. If you guys made it through the entire video or just cut to the points where you guys wanted to listen to, I hope it gives you guys some inspiration to play Nasus, or maybe play him in a different way to potentially get a higher rank. Good luck with that. I will link my Twitch and Discord down below. If you guys want to follow that, make sure to join my Discord, and I notify everybody when I go live. So it'll be great if you guys can subscribe and join my Discord. That'll be great. If you guys like the video, give a thumbs up, maybe will be great. But yeah, in the near future, maybe I will be uploading some matchup tips, or just like VOD reviews of my games in Challenger. If you guys are interested in that, make sure to maybe leave a comment down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.